Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by a gentleman who was recommended to me by a Bernie delegate who I had on when she was running as a candidate, Miss Selena Vickers. She's amazing. Follow her. So I digress. My guest tonight is Mr. Stephen Noble Smith. He is currently running for the gubernatorial position in West Virginia. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Stephen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I can see why Selena recommended you, because I was looking through your website and I was just kind of in awe, because my favorite kinds of candidates are the ones who have been doing humanitarian and activist work before they run. It seems a little more genuine. So can you I know for the past 6 years, you've been working with a certain organization, but your parents actually were humanitarians as well. So do you just kind of want to touch on that first, like how you grew up, a little bit about your parents?
Sure.
And what they did?
Yeah, I love talking about my folks. So my dad helped start the West Virginia Coalition for the Homeless here. He helped start the Public Defender Services. He's worked in nonprofits his whole life. And my mom helped make our home the kind of place that always had extra people in it. So foster kids and neighborhood children and extended family members who are between jobs. And so yeah, that's the kind of place I grew up in, and the kind of place that a lot of West Virginians grow up in. One of the things folks don't know about West Virginia, here we're always taught that we're last in everything, and it's actually not true. West Virginia is near the top of the list in terms of things that credit card companies don't care about, right? We're tops in the list of things like volunteer service and the amount of time we spend with our neighbors, military service, the time we spend with our extended families, that West Virginia is really a wonderful place. That's why we live here, even though we've got an economy that's run by the good old boys club, is that it's a really special place where people genuinely do look out for each other in a way that doesn't always happen in a big city.
Absolutely. And you guys may remember a few months ago, I had Rusty Williams on. He's an activist, and he speaks very highly of Stephen as well. So that's good news, because I love me some Rusty. So it should be in the comments any second. So I digress, but you went away to school and then you started doing things on campus as well. Can you describe a little bit of what you did?
Yeah, sure. So I went to Harvard, and as an undergraduate, a bunch of us saw that we were at this big fancy institution with this multi-billion-dollar endowment. Meanwhile, the people who did the work to make the school run, right, janitors and security guards and food service workers, were not making enough money to raise their families. And that felt like a pretty gross injustice to us. And so we found common cause with those workers. And we did what you do as a student activist, right? You hold solidarity rallies and petitions, and you try to build up support. And we did all of the things you were supposed to do. And it was a really good lesson that sometimes you do all the things you're supposed to do and you have all the right answers, and then the other side still doesn't budge. And that's what happened. So after 3 years of campaigns, the university came out with this grand plan. They said, we have listened to the students and the workers, and we do need to provide a better life for these workers. And so we are going to offer museum passes and let the workers get the benefits of this university. And it was so patronizing, right? We used to say, you can't eat museum passes. It was such a denigration of the work they did to say, so what if you can't feed your kids? So what if you don't have enough money for medical care? And so it was at that point, 3 years in, that a group of us said, we have to escalate. And so we planned a sit-in the president's office we thought would last 2 or 3 days, and we would bend the university to our will and make them do something decent. And instead, it took 3 weeks. 3 weeks. A couple dozen of us lived in the president's office and continued to build support locally on campus, in the community, nationwide, to draw attention to this disgusting gap between an institution that was literally sitting on billions of dollars and simultaneously refusing to treat the people inside of it with dignity. And in the end, we won. Harvard now has a living wage. At the time, it was $11.35 an hour that we won, plus benefits, and it's continued to climb because of the way the ordinance or the rule was written. But it's the same story everywhere in America, and West Virginia is no different. That every single sector of the economy is David versus Goliath, and Goliath has been winning for 20 or 30 years, if not longer. And so in West Virginia, what that looks like is people in families that used to be able to get by on one income now can't make a living off of three. And we wonder why suicide rates are climbing and divorces are climbing and mental illness is climbing. When you put so much pain and trauma and pressure on the backs of families, it's no wonder we have a historic drug overdose crisis.
Absolutely. And something I really appreciated on your website as well is that you talk about drug usage and how it's more of a medical need rather than putting people in jail. We should be helping them. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Sure. So we know for a fact that the most common time for someone to overdose is when they return from prison to society. So this notion that prison is anything other than a way to make substance abuse worse is a lie. It's a popular lie, but it's a lie. Not only is the substance use crisis a medical crisis and a public health crisis and not a criminal justice crisis, it is also a class crisis that, when you see every 9 years, the overdose death rate in the United States doubles. Every 9 years for the last 3 or 4 decades, every 9 years doubles. It's not because the drugs got better. It's not because people got worse. It's because the economy makes life harder and more painful. And when people are in pain, when we heap trauma after trauma after trauma, generation after generation, that's when people turn to something, anything that can ease even for a moment that pain. And so, yes, we need treatment. Yes, we need prevention. No, we don't need more jails and prisons. But we also need to look for the kinds of economic reorganization in society so that we aren't constantly inflicting pain on working families in our state and across the country.
Yes. yes. Do you guys have...
And we can do it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Go ahead.
Do you guys have for-profit prisons in West Virginia?
We do not. West Virginia has kept them out. Thank goodness. But that does not mean that that prison as a whole is not a class-based system where, just like everywhere else in the country, in West Virginia, once you are charged with a crime, you are better off if you are rich and innocent than poor. And if you're better off if you're rich and guilty than if you are poor and innocent, because our system is so broken.
Absolutely. As far as speaking of healthcare a bit, what is your passion as far as healthcare? Do you support Medicare for all?
I do support Medicare for all, and our campaign supports Medicare for all for a million reasons. As you know, I was in the hospital last week, and it was just a minor surgery. But it was an object lesson in how broken the healthcare system is, and inspiring the people inside that system are who try to keep it going in spite of all these barriers. But, I'm sitting there having a conversation with my doctor, a bright person, a well-educated person who can't tell me, can't even begin to tell me how much a particular test or treatment is going to cost, has no idea, right? I mean, that isn't a situation that's good for anybody. And over and over again, talking to the workers in the hospital, the nurses and the EMS responders. So a first responder who is transporting me from one hospital to another for surgery, talking about, he's working 3 or 4 jobs, ambulances and helicopters, some of which pay as little as $9.75 an hour. So here are these people. The same can be said of child care workers, home health care workers. It's as if we've built a society where there is an inverse relationship, an inverse comparison between how important your job is and how little you get paid, right? I mean, that first responders, home health care workers, child care workers, these people who are bearing the brunt of pain and work and trauma in our system and in our society, we're essentially re-traumatizing them by making them do so at a poverty wage. And that's what happens when a health system is geared to make somebody money, is that they make it work for the shareholders. And what's the best way to please a shareholder? You cut 1,000 jobs. What's the best way to please a shareholder? You reduce costs, you reduce benefits for workers. If instead we had a system like any number of countries across the world that said, we want to put the health of our patients first, and we're going to judge the success of the system based on the health of patients, and we're not going to waste, literally hundreds of millions and billions of dollars a year just on people whose job it is to help make sure people don't get coverage, then we would have a healthcare system we can be proud of, and we could use all of these talented people who are already doing great work and free them to do the work of caring for people instead of doing the work of pinching a penny here and there.
Absolutely. I struggle with that because I have medical needs and I work in healthcare. So I see this shit. Like, I see this every day. Like, I got this rare disorder where I woke up one day and I was legally blind. Like, that happened. My audience knows it happened in August. It happened overnight. So I have to get injections in both eyes every 4 weeks. Each injection before insurance is $13,000. So yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, I have insurance, but, I have a $5,000 deductible. And, so I met my deductible in, I believe it was November 21st. And then it started all over again, January 1st. So I'm like, okay, what's the point? So, and I work in healthcare. So I see, and Medicare. So I see these people who just, especially the elderly and the disenfranchised. It's like, if you're not for Medicare for all, like, you really sound privileged as hell. Like,
yeah. How is your eyesight now?
Oh,
with
it's
the treatments?
Permanent. Yeah, it's permanent. I'm going to have to, I'm going to be visually impaired for the rest of my life.
With the treatments, are you able to at least see some things, lights and darks and stuff?
Yes, but as it sounds funny, but I trip and fall a lot and stuff because it's like everything's kind of like off kilter in a way. But so yeah, it's kind of like I have to hold things literally like right here to even see them like this much. Yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, but to your point, I mean, it's again, it does not have to be this way. There's this thing that's happening here in West Virginia where so my wife and I are foster parents, and foster kids in West Virginia, as in a lot of states, get this sort of pretty good Medicaid, and it's covered by the state, and it operates sort of in the way that you would want healthcare too, where you take someone to a doctor and they get the help they need because someone years ago decided, hey, we should make the care of these kids a top priority, and we should not put the same barriers up that we do in other cases. Well, sure enough, a few healthcare companies come along and they're like, well, wait a second, we can make some money off of this. And so we're right now in the middle of a fight here in West Virginia to try to keep the state from privatizing the foster care of children. And the arguments are simple. I mean, that's the thing that excites me about this moment in West Virginia and across the country is that everybody understands what's going on. There is nobody who looks at this system and says, this is anything but crooked. And so in West Virginia, we just look at the other states that have tried this. There's only two ways to make money in healthcare. One is to pay people less, and the other is to give less services. And that's what's happened. Mm-hmm. These foster kids in Kentucky and Texas, they're getting as little as 10% less services because the health insurance companies got to make their money. And it does not have to be this way. Medicare for All is a really good answer to the problem. It may or may not be a perfect one, but that's how we get there, is by taking those bold steps. And in West Virginia and across the country, we've got to be ready where hopefully we win Medicare for All in 2021, and we get to work implementing it. And if that doesn't happen, we've got to be ready to implement whatever we can as close as possible to universal health coverage if the federal government isn't able to do it. And you know who it would be best for? Small businesses. So I ran a nonprofit organization. We have small businesses, and union shops are a big part of our campaign. And they're the ones who have the most, the margins for running a small business are basically non-existent. And every year, your healthcare costs go up 3, 5, 7%. So it's like, it's the main cause of healthcare bills are the main cause of bankruptcy. They're one of the main reasons why small businesses close down. And so anyway, we know this system doesn't work, and people are alive to that fact and ready to change it.
You sound so hopeful. I'm just like, I'm wondering because, and I agree that so many people are, but I think we still suffer from cognitive dissonance with so many people. How do you, if you're campaigning and you tell someone, look, we need Medicare for All, and they're like, I'm not paying for that. I don't, or it's fine how it is because they have no medical problems, so they don't really care. How do you respond to that? How do you convince them that this is actually, something that's feasible and that people need?
Yeah, what a great question. So I think the first thing that our campaign does a little bit differently that I'm really proud of, and one of the reasons why we're starting a campaign for governor 2 years in advance, is that we actually don't see ourselves in the business of convincing. That we don't think it's our job to go into a place and say, here's what you need to listen to me. That the foundational idea of our campaign is that no one in West Virginia knows the pain of this state and how to heal it. No one knows the problem better than the people of this state. So it'd be ridiculous, it'd be presumptuous of me or anyone from our campaign or any one of the candidates we're recruiting to run with us to walk in and say, here's what you need to do, or here's what needs to happen. That's what politicians do all the time, and they get laughed out of races. Part of the reasons why people stay home. By starting 2 years early, what we get to do instead is to say, you would do if you were governor. Why? What neighborhood that most need to change? What would change them? And then inevitably, people get to the kinds of big, bold ideas. Everyday people don't want small workaround policy solutions. People want big, bold change. They want to feel that their lives are different, that our lives are going to get genuinely better. So when you ask people what they want, they come up with big, bold ideas, And then sometimes, as you pointed out, folks will get to a point of saying, well, but politicians have always been telling us that we can't have that because there's no money. And in West Virginia, that's particularly true because we are told constantly that we are a state that is poor and that cannot afford these things. And that's someplace where we can help because the truth is on our side. And the truth in West Virginia is that this right now is the richest time in West Virginia history in real GDP per capita adjusted for inflation. Now, nobody in West Virginia feels that way because that wealth does not stay here. It gets soaked up. And I'm not just talking about the extractive industries. I'm talking about big pharma. I'm talking about Walmart. Every industry in our economy has become a well-oiled machine at sucking the wealth and the work of the people of West Virginia out of this state and pumping it into the pockets of shareholders around the country and around the globe. And so all we need to do to get all the things we want, right? Universal education, quality education, universal health care, broadband internet access, you name it. We can have all of those things so long as we stop letting these people rob from us. And I'll give you one example. So in West Virginia, the tax code has been flipped upside down so that little by little over the last 30, 40, 50 years, there has been basically the tax code is turned into Swiss cheese, right? It's just full of holes. And the cumulative effect is that the person who's working at the dollar store pays a cumulative tax rate of about 9.5%. And that our governor, who is a billionaire, Cole Barron, he doesn't even pay the taxes he owes. His cumulative tax rate is somewhere in the neighborhood of he and his buddies of 4 or 5%. So you have a wildly regressive tax. Now check this out. If we were to make sure that the wealthiest West Virginians simply paid the same cumulative tax rate as the person who works at Dollar General. Now, we actually think they should pay more. But even if they just paid the same, it would generate $525 million per year in new revenue. And that is enough to send every West Virginia kid who wants to go to technical college, apprenticeship, medical school for free and still have a couple $100 million to put into incentivizing small businesses and local entrepreneurs and co-ops and union shops so we can rebuild our economy. So we have the money, we have the wealth. The people of this state are already working hard enough to have produced that wealth. We just have to hold on to it, and we can do it.
Absolutely. Wow, that's so gross. Oh my God.
It is gross.
It's so abhorrent. So I've interviewed over 100 candidates from across the country. And when I ask them, what are the things, people ask you about the most when you're going campaigning door to door and canvassing, they always say healthcare. Always, always, always. Mm-hmm. And then guess what the second thing they always say is?
What do they say?
Money out of politics.
Yeah.
That's just like the mother lode of everything seems to stem from that. So have you made a pledge that states that your small donations only?
Yeah. And in fact, folks should check out, we just produced a film by this awesome West Virginia filmmaker, J.D. Belcher, who did some of the work for the Ojeda campaign. Folks should check it out on our website, wvcantwait.com. And in that film, I was saying this sort of as a joke, but it became one of the crucial moments in the film. I actually say 3 times in a row, we do not take corporate cash. And so we have made the pledge, but we're trying to go even further than that. And so I hope that folks who are listening who want to see the kind of people's politics that's working around the country happen in rural America will invest in the campaign and help us fund a campaign without corporate dollars. I'm proud of the fact that we've already raised over $121,000 in our first couple of months on small. I know. We're doing the thing.
Holy shit! Are you serious?
Yes, yes,
Damn!
and it's a lot of money,
That's a
and it's
lot of
also
basement dwellers chipping
uh,
in, man.
it's also not enough to fight these guys. So we need all the help we can get. But I want to say two more things of how we look at money in politics and money in campaigning. One is that in West Virginia, one of the things we believe wholeheartedly is that in order for anybody, any Democrat, especially a progressive Democrat or a populist Democrat to win in West Virginia, they're going to have to not just win one campaign, but build a movement that can rebuild the party. And so what that looks like for us is that in addition to running a gubernatorial campaign, we are also building 55 county teams. So every single county of West Virginia is building its own, not just get out the vote operation, but political operation, recruiting candidates, taking local action. So we have 89 county captains recruited and trained already in those 55 counties. We've got these 32 constituency teams. So students can't wait, veterans can't wait, teachers can't wait, LGBTQ can't wait, small business can't wait. You get the idea. And that we're rebuilding the party from the ground up. And the main way that happens is by getting lots of people to run with us. We have 20, I think it's 29 at last count, people who have pledged to run with us in 2020. And we are requiring that if you want to run with us, if you want to help be a part of this movement and get the benefit of these voters and volunteers that we're bringing on, you also have to make a pledge not to take corporate cash. So we're able to use it as a way to say, if you want the benefits of this organizing that we're doing, you have to also be willing to reject corporate donations. Here's the last thing I'll say about money. And it's something we're really excited about. We haven't actually started implementing it yet, but we are making this pledge, is that we're going to take $1 out of every $10 we raise. So in a gubernatorial race in West Virginia, that's going to be, we'll probably raise a few million, so a few $100,000. We're going to take $1 out of every $10 we raise and invest it back into West Virginia communities during the campaign as a way to demonstrate the values of this campaign through action. And we're really excited about this. We're going to start implementing this idea over the summer because we actually don't think that me and our campaign staff should make those decisions. They're going to be made by our county teams and our constituency teams. But it's also a promise we make to everyone who donates, is that we're tired of a politics where even in the kind of campaigns we admire, so much money in politics gets spent on literal garbage, right? I mean, literally garbage, blue and red flyers that end up in people's trash, and ads that are immediately forgettable, and so on and so forth. And so $1 out of every $10 we're going to spend doing real things to make people's lives better in West Virginia that also draw attention to the issues we care about. And so if you're watching this and thinking about making a donation, know that when you make that $1,000 max contribution, which is the most you can donate in West Virginia, that 100 of that will go to directly impacting the lives of West Virginians in the meantime.
That is phenomenal.
Thanks.
I apologize if I say your name wrong, sir. Phil Rolliston said he's a county captain for Pocahontas County.
Hey, Phil.
He said, we love this movement.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, that's it's one of the things we are training ourselves to do, and Phil's a great example of this, is that, again, even among the politicians and candidates that we admire around the country and around the state, too often we're guilty of falling into this received culture that says that what we need is a man, what we need is a woman, what we need is one person. And what we know for a fact is that never, not ever, not in West Virginia history, not in American history, has one politician won the kind of change we need. It has always required a movement. And that's how we talk about the campaign. That's why we emphasize recruiting those hopefully 100+ candidates and building political infrastructure in every county and every constituency, because again, not ever has one person or one candidate been the change that we need. And so, yeah, well said, Phil.
Wow, you're getting a lot of love in these comments. It makes me happy. I definitely want you to read them afterwards too. And
okay, I will.
My brother here, my RP brother, did put your website in the comments as well, in case people want to share or donate or what have you. So
thank you.
One of the things I wrote down that I found really awesome was that you actually worked on something to get 5.2 million more school breakfasts.
Yeah. For all of the ways that West Virginia and West Virginians get told that we're at the bottom of the list and we don't know how to do this, one thing we actually do pretty well in West Virginia, because we've had to, is we're pretty good at taking care of our kids, especially kids who are at the margins. So one example of this, probably all of your viewers know that the nationwide teacher and school service personnel strikes started here in West Virginia, with our teachers standing up for our kids last year and then coming back and doing it again this year. And one of the things we know from the statistics is that West Virginia is in the top 5. Our teachers, our schools are in the top 5 in the country in terms of the performance in math and reading of low-income kids, right? And so we know how to take care of the kids who are most vulnerable. And so in West Virginia, you see in literally hundreds of churches, in schools, you see these backpack programs. Everywhere you look, people are finding a way to help feed our kids, because 1 in 5 West Virginia kids go hungry every year. So anyway, that brings us to the thing you mentioned. So West Virginia had this really enterprising Office of Child Nutrition, the people who are in charge of school breakfast and lunch. This was 6 years ago. And so that's sort of one piece of the puzzle. And another piece of the puzzle is we had this awesome state senator named John Unger, who kept hearing the stories of people in his district who were who had children in their classrooms who were sneaking food out of the school in order to be able to feed themselves and their brothers and sisters on the weekends. And then you had the third piece of the puzzle was that we had our organization called Our Children, Our Future, which itself was a coalition of, continues to exist, a coalition of over 100 nonprofits and community organizations and churches and allies from different walks of life interested in ending child poverty. So you bring all these people together, and we put together a piece of legislation called the Feed to Achieve Act. And it passed in, I think it was 2013 or 20, yeah, I think it was 2013. And it basically set up a system that encouraged local school districts to do everything in their power to take advantage of new federal laws that made it easier to feed school breakfast and lunch, especially to low-income kids. And then we worked over the next few years to make sure those changes got implemented, things like grab-and-go breakfasts and, getting counties to sign on for this federal program where if you have a certain percentage of kids below the poverty line, then you can get all of your school breakfasts comped, because it's actually cheaper than trying to track all of the payments and whatnot. And so anyway, I want to be clear that with that and anything else that happened that our organization worked on, it wasn't because of me, but we had people coming together from all walks of life saying, we can do better for our kids. And when that happens, good things happen. And yes, the result is that the last time we checked the numbers, the breakfasts served per year in school had increased by 5.2 million from before the law was passed to now. And then the next thing that people are doing, and if you're watching this and you're trying to find some exciting way to get your school involved in the fight against hunger, you can do this. there's a school district in West Virginia in Roane County that we visited a few days ago, where they are now providing supper, like afternoon meal, dinner, essentially, to in every single one of their schools. And it's this really beautiful thing that when your school provides a meal, basically any meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, to a student, you can get it reimbursed by the federal government through the the food folks. I'm forgetting the name, FDA or whatever. School nutrition office of federal nutrition or whatever. Anyway, so in West Virginia, this school district was like, we really want to feed our kids better, and we want them to get more involved in extracurriculars, and we want them to stick around for things like mentoring and coaching and after-school programs. So we're going to offer a meal, 45 minutes after school ends. And what they found is that, not only are the kids getting food, their participation in extracurriculars, after-school programs has just shot through the roof. And now we're encouraging, as our campaign, other school districts to say, hey, maybe we can do that here. And anybody who's watching this anywhere in the country, these are federal laws. So your local kids' school could start doing this if they had an interest.
Plus, also, I've read so many stories that when kids eat breakfast and everything, their test scores are better, they retain things better. I mean, it just seems like it's kind of an advantageous thing to do. But yeah, I mean, right on. That's amazing. I'm sure, especially single mothers and everything, I can't even imagine the world of difference that would make in their kids' lives. Oh, you're getting a lot of people wishing they were in West Virginia so they could vote for you.
All right, let me be very clear. I'm going to talk to the people who are not in West Virginia. Move here. The housing is not too expensive. We've got one of the most beautiful states in the country. And if you want to make a difference in people's lives, if you care about things like neighbors and extended family and being defined by more than just your job, West Virginia is a pretty damn good place to move. So if there's anyone from outside the country that wants to move here, one of my favorite pet projects is talking to people who want to move to West Virginia. So my cell phone is 304-610-6512. Somebody can put it in the comments. My email address is Stephen, Stephen, at wvcantwait.com. Stephen at wvcantwait.com. If you're outside of the state and want to move here, I'd love to talk to you about that. But the other thing we're doing for folks out of state is that it has become this fashionable thing for bold pro-labor candidates to do fundraisers and events in other parts of the country. And we went back and forth on that. And, we certainly appreciate support from other parts of the country, but we wanted to figure out a way to do it differently because we don't like the way that, people just go and sometimes feel like they're just doing a song and dance for rich people in other places. And so the way we're doing this, we're going to do a series of events around the country later this year where in every single place, the event is going to be hosted by a West Virginian, someone from West Virginia who lives in that place and who is going to be doing long-term organizing from that place, making phone calls and postcards and contributing on the ground effort from Cleveland or Pittsburgh or North Carolina or New York or DC or Chicago or wherever. And so if you're watching this and you want to get plugged into the campaign and meet me and learn about what we're doing, send me an email about that too, and I can hook you up to one of those events that will launch. What we're calling them is there are West Virginians Everywhere chapters. So there'll be a West Virginians Everywhere New York and a West Virginians Everywhere Chicago, and then so on and so forth. So let me know, and I'll connect you to our folks on the ground who are planning those events, and hopefully we'll get to meet you when we're in town. And then please donate. Again, we're proud of the fact that 1 out of every $10 you donate will stay in this state doing real things. And the other $9 will be spent not just helping my campaign, but helping to fuel a movement that will last beyond 2020.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Like, I don't even know what else to say. I'm just like, yep, yep. It's funny because I always tell my candidates, like, you're never going to, like, some people are, I feel like, are almost too picky. Like, with, they forget that people are human, and fallible. And, I always tell people you're not going to find the perfect candidate unless you run yourself. Like,
Yeah.
that's the only time. But I'm like, holy shit, I'm agreeing with this dude on like literally everything, which doesn't typically happen, even with Bernard.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's dozens of us, right? I mean, that's the thing is that you said it. Unless you run yourself, you're never going to find the candidate that is exactly for you. And so we just need a whole lot more of ourselves running. And that's the offer we're making, especially for folks who are watching this who are in West Virginia. If you've ever thought about running for office, what we're trying to do is change the calculation. That usually, especially if you're a first-time candidate, an outsider candidate, one who's not taking corporate cash, it is an uphill battle to run a campaign. And what we're saying is we're going to make it not so much of an uphill battle because we're going to do it together. We're going to provide you with the training you need. We're going to provide your campaign team with the training they need. And when push comes to shove, the volunteers we're recruiting for the gubernatorial are going to help knock doors for you too. And that's how we win, is by all running together, running our own political machine for us, instead of a political machine that just keeps the status quo in place. So if you're watching this and you've ever thought about running, I promise you we're going to make it easier to do this year than it's been in a long time, if ever, in West Virginia, because you won't have to do it alone.
that is so awesome. No, I am not. Andy, one of my teammates said, "Are you fangirling?" I'm not. I'm appreciating. There's a difference. Do you know what Humanist Report is?
No, I don't.
You ever watch that? Okay, well, it's the show that actually inspired me to start doing what I do, and I had the host on, which was like I couldn't even handle it. So I tried to hold it in, but it was bad. Like, I mean, I've never fangirled like that in my life. So I'm getting teased.
Yeah, no, I'm with you though, and I'm excited. I feel like we are living in a moment where people all across the country are doing these heroic things that are worth our admiration, right? I mean, for me, the place I'm fanboying most is on the teachers and school service personnel here in West Virginia, right? Who a year ago said it doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to live with a situation where our healthcare is garbage. We don't have to live in a situation where the so-called raises that we're getting are far outpaced by the increased costs in healthcare. And so they did what you do if you're a courageous person. You find other courageous people and you take courageous action. And man, you wouldn't believe it. For 9 days, the people of West Virginia were in charge of the government, and good things happened. And it's that kind of stuff that's happening on the ground. People like, I'm going to do a quick shout out, Jay O'Neill and Emily Comer and Elizabeth Marciano and Jenny Craig and so many others across, Jessica Salfia, who are writing books and planning actions and doing all of this while also being teachers and school service personnel, Joe White, and still having the energy at the end of the day to show the rest of us what that courage looks like to put themselves out there. That I'm with you. I am in a moment of appreciation just for what's happening in our movement in our country right now, because it's not celebrities, it's not the political candidates, it's everyday people across West Virginia, across the country, who are reminding us how brave we can be.
Absolutely. Just the sheer fact that you're wearing a hoodie, I can tell you're real. Because I'm not a suit and tie person, and when people show up to my show in a suit and tie, I'm like, I don't think they've ever seen my show because yeah, no, I can already tell a lot about people. So yeah, that's a good thing. We want your not normal or average, but we want us running. We want people who have struggled and who have been activists and, who know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck and things like this. And I knew this was going to come up. I knew it. People want to know about Mansion. Of course.
Okay. Yes, of course.
Have you met him and discussed things politically?
Some over the years. So I'm really proud of the work that our organization, Our Children, Our Future, did to work with some folks will remember that Manchin was on the fence originally on protecting the Affordable Care Act. And a bunch of groups in West Virginia, including ours, worked with him to do a series of town halls was that last year or 2 years ago? I guess it was 2 years ago now, that helped, I think, helped push him and also help hold him accountable to not cave, to not be the one Democrat who would cave on Affordable Care Act. And he didn't. He kept that promise. And so we got to know each other through that and some other issues as an organizer. We'll see. We don't know what he's going to do. What I imagine people are asking about is that, and for folks who are watching, is that he has recently dipped his toe in the waters and said that he would consider running for governor himself. He's currently the U.S. Senator. And so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We're perfectly happy right now with our opponent. And our opponent right now is Jim Justice. And Jim Justice is a gift of an opponent. Because in West Virginia, we say it's not left versus right. It's not Democrats versus Republicans. It's the good old boys club versus everybody else. And Jim Justice is the good old boys club. He is a man who became a billionaire by not paying his taxes, by shortchanging small businesses, and by exploiting the labor of working people. And then we can't be surprised when he gets into office and then continues to avoid his taxes and try to reduce taxes for his buddies, shortchange and undermine and undercut small businesses, and continue to exploit working people. And he ran as a Democrat in West Virginia, and then switched parties 6 months later. But the truth was, he was never a Democrat. He's not even a Republican. He's a member of the good old boys club. And that is the distinction we need to draw in West Virginia and around the country is who does government belong to? And the answer shouldn't be, we don't think the answer should be the Democrats or the Republicans. We think the answer to that question should be the people of that state, the people of that country. And that's what we're trying to do here. And so right now we're running against Jim Justice, and we're having fun doing it because West Virginia is ready to not be led by the same old good old boys club we've always had.
Well, you could certainly play with that last name. That's funny as hell.
In our the last gubernatorial, this is actually funny. People appreciate this. The last gubernatorial campaign in West Virginia, the two major party candidates were literally named Coal and Justice. And Justice himself was a coal baron. You can't make this stuff up. The people of West Virginia are exhausted, and rightly so, by a politics that offers them, two sides to the same coin, offers them two different ways. In West Virginia, Democrats and Republicans have been robbing people for the last 30, 40 years. And that's the reason why we have a teachers and school service personnel strike. The people are taking power into their own hands. It's why we have these exciting consumer environmental battles like what's happening in Jefferson County. It's why we've had multiple other strikes in West Virginia. It's why we were talking about this last night at a town hall, that one of the ways that people are engaging in this people's campaign, in this people's action, is in churches fighting. The most innovative things that are happening in the opioid crisis in West Virginia are happening in churches and community centers, are happening where people have no money but are figuring out and scraping together ways to support each other through their recovery and through their community's recovery. And if you add up all of that talent and resilience and ingenuity, we have all of the talent and ingenuity and resilience we need to run the government of West Virginia, and we don't need any out-of-state company or billionaire or party hack to do it for us.
Absolutely. And I love that you have no trepidation calling him out. So I look forward to seeing the debate, if he debates you, because it's my experience that a lot of my candidates don't actually get to debate who they're running against because they fail.
Yeah, we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on that you're looking forward to working on?
We've sort of danced around a little bit, but I think the most important question people should have and do have in West Virginia is, how do you turn the economy around? And I want to talk a little bit about what we're playing with, the kinds of ideas we're playing with here, because we hope that other states will also start talking about these. That the status quo in America, and this is not just West Virginia, although it's particularly bad here, is that over the last 30 or 40 years, there's been a race to the bottom, right? A race to get to build your economy through these out-of-state monopolies. You see it in every single state, that's wooing the next Amazon or Walmart or whatever. You see it every time states reduce corporate taxes. You see it every time they create these tax giveaways for out-of-state monopolies. And it's become again, a race to the bottom. Every time a state bends to the will of these out-of-state monopolies, it not only hurts wages in their state, it also hurts local businesses. It also hurts small businesses. It also hurts cooperatives. And it chips away at the economy, where we now have an economy where literally every industry is dominated by a handful of monopolies. And that's what we should call them, because that's what they are. And that was a trend that started under Clinton and has continued through Democratic and Republican presidents the last 20 or 30 years, is that our economy has become in thrall to monopolies in a way that is arguably unprecedented, even in the 1910s and 20s. So the question then becomes, what's the alternative? And part of the answer is that we need a robust government that can provide health insurance for everybody and can educate people. But we also have to be really serious about, how do we change the rules of the game so that we're incentivizing local businesses, small businesses, cooperatives, union shops, the engines of our economy that actually create good jobs, the engines of our economy that actually keep wealth here. And so in West Virginia, what we're talking about, we'd love to hear ideas of ways other states are doing this, but we think most aren't, is we are looking for ways to shift the balance of power so that we're actually putting a hand on the scale in favor of small businesses and not out-of-state monopolies. So, for example, maybe that looks like, and we're running a 2-year campaign, we're building these policies as we go, but maybe that looks like exempting small businesses and local retailers from a sales tax. Sales tax is regressive anyway, right? Maybe it looks like a big box tax that they've experimented with. I don't know that it's been passed, but I know it's been proposed in places like Connecticut and Vermont, where you take these companies that are paying people $8, $9 an hour and say, look, if you're going to pay our people $8, $9 an hour and undercut our local businesses, then you're going to pay a tax to make sure that wealth stays here. Maybe it includes, or almost certainly it also includes, re-examining the regulations where, look at something like agriculture, right? Where the regulations are basically written so that only multinational corporations and agribusiness can even operate a farm in West Virginia, because the regulations are so particular and onerous. They are literally written to hurt small farmers. And so we want to engage in a project over the next 2 years, and we encourage others to do the same, of re-examine every single law on the books that pertains to the way business is done, and ask yourself, is this written to benefit out-of-state monopolies, or is it written to benefit local entrepreneurs, small businesses, union shops, and cooperatives? And here's how we think that plays out, that when we get elected, not just us, but people in all different levels of government, if we can rewrite the tax code, rewrite the regulations so that West Virginia becomes overnight, because it wouldn't be that hard because other places aren't doing this, overnight becomes the best place in the country to start a small business, the best place in the country to bring your small business, the best place in a country to be a union shop or to run an apprenticeship program, the best place in the country to start a cooperative or social enterprise. That if we incentivize those parts of the economy that actually do right by people, that we can sort of replace the jobs, so that West Virginia is going to always have a hard time competing for a major factory with 1,000 jobs, and that's okay, because largely that factory that comes here may leave 5 years later when they get a better deal from someplace else. What we want to be is the place that nobody can compete with when it comes to running a 20-person business or a 40-person business or a cooperative or a union-run shop or a worker-owned business, because we think those are the types of enterprises that keep wealth here and create jobs. So I'd love for people to send ideas of what that looks like. Obviously, we have a strong small business constituency team here that we are listening to, but we think we've got to rewrite every inch of the tax code and regulation code to favor those small businesses and to put more burdens on the out-of-state companies that want to come here and take our wealth and take our work and redistribute it to their shareholders. So that's a big project. It's one we're engaged in. It's one we want help with. It's one we challenge other states to innovate on as well. Because we think that's actually how we change the economy, is by incentivizing the type of economic activity that puts workers and families and communities and local wealth first.
It sounds like you're actually describing like a federal job guarantee of sorts. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that could be part of it. But to me, those are slightly different projects. So in West Virginia, we absolutely need a new works progress administration, right? We have a ton of infrastructure that needs to get built and a ton of people who are out of work. And we got to put those things together. And that means a massive works progress administration, a massive jobs program to get people back to work. But what we're also talking about is we want private sector jobs. We just want a different kind of private sector job, one that is not dominated by $9.75 an hour jobs, but that's dominated by $20 and $30 an hour jobs that have good benefits and that were started by somebody who lives down the block. Because when the person owns the business, lives down the block, they pump more money into that community. They pump more time into that community. And so, yes, jobs guarantees and works programs are important for rebuilding infrastructure, but we also have to change the way that the private sector works and who it works for. And we can do both of those things.
Awesome. What are your biggest passions as far as what elements do you want to work on primarily as far as climate change or fracking or pipelines or what solar power?
Yeah, I mean, so we all know that the future of energy in the world and in the United States is going to be cleaner, and that's good. And the faster we can get there, the better. Here's the mistake that generations of Democrats have made in places like West Virginia, and we are not going to make that mistake here, is that we actually think that the environment and the society and the economy ought to work for working people. And so there have been folks, especially at the national level, who have tried to score points by picking fights with coal miners and that way of life. And our campaign is one that is 100% on the side of coal miners. We just aren't on the side of coal executives. And coal miners know full well what the future of the energy industry is. Coal miners know full well what it means to fight for their union, what it means to fight for a decent job. And the way we get there is by turning every job, including green jobs, into a good job. That the thing we can learn from the coal industry, and not from the coal industry, but from coal unions, is that 100 years ago, coal mining was one of the worst jobs on the planet. If you were a coal miner in West Virginia, you didn't even own your house, right? The school was owned by the company. The house was owned by the company. Your currency was printed by the company. And not only that, but if you're a coal miner living in West Virginia in 1918, you are more likely to die on the job than a soldier fighting for America in World War I. So then we have to ask ourselves, how did coal mining become this sought-after job? How did it become a job where people could make $70,000 or $80,000 a year? And the answer is unions. And that is a legacy that we should be proud of, and that our campaign is proud of. If for folks who have watched the video, the first short film that came out about the campaign, our campaign launched in Matewan, West Virginia, where mine workers came together, black, white, and immigrant, right? And anytime that happens in American history, you know they fought like hell to break those people up. But workers came together, black, white, and immigrant, and literally had to take up arms just to protect their constitutional rights, just to protect basic dignity. And eventually they won a union, and eventually that union turned this job that previously had been miserable into a job that had dignity. And that lesson is one that the rest of the country needs to hear about. So as we build an economy that is cleaner, we need to take the lesson from coal miners and the coal who have worked for the last 100 years to make sure that every new clean job we create is also a middle class job. And that's the thing that hasn't happened before. When people talk about the coal industry, they go to someone who's making 70, 80 grand a year and say, hey, I'm going to get you job training. And after I'm done, you're going to be able to get a $35,000 a year job. Probably not where you live. And that is an insult. And West Virginians have been right to feel insulted by that claim. And so we can have an economy and an environment that work for working people. We have to stop treating working people as if they're the problem or the enemy. When we get all working families together, we can have both an economy and an environment that works for everybody. So
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's what we're trying to do here in West Virginia.
I'm going to call you Bernie Jr. I mean, that's a compliment coming.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I was going to say, because to me, that's good. Oh, also, is it clean coal or no? I'm just kidding. What you heard what I said, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The video lagged a second. I'm just reading through here. Public banking, you support that?
Yeah. No, not only do we support it, I'm proud of the fact that was one of the I and our organization, the Healthy Kids and Families Coalition, before I left that job a couple of months ago to run, was one of the founding members of the West Virginia Public Bank Coalition. And that's one of the ways that we create the kind of capital we need to support different kinds of small businesses, right? So if you are a small business in West Virginia or cooperative in West Virginia and you want some startup capital, it is incredibly hard to come by right now. But if we had a public bank that had an interest in the public welfare and was willing to make those kinds of investments, then that's part of how we get the economy we need.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Is there anything else? Well, basically, let's word it like I always do. What would you like to leave our audience with? What do you want our viewers to take away from our discussion, and also to hopefully pique their interest to go to your website and donate or share this show and recommend you to other West Virginians?
Sure. So the short of it is we want to work with you, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. The way we're going and all the campaigns is by all of us pitching in together. So if you're watching this, the absolute best thing you can do is to contact me directly. That most of my day, every day, is on the phone with people trying to find the perfect role for them and what we're trying to do. And maybe that's if you live outside of West Virginia, it's helping to build one of these West Virginians Everywhere chapters. If you're inside West Virginia, maybe it's becoming a county captain or a constituency captain or running for office yourself. But this campaign invests a lot of time and energy in building a movement around the time and talent and energy of each person, because that's the movement we want to be a part of. Is not one where you show up and someone's like, here's your walk list, go talk to a bunch of strangers, and here's your script, don't make sure to talk like a robot. And there will be some of that. Canvassing is important, but especially right now we need a movement that where talented people get to use their talents. So if that's you, please be in touch directly. If you can't make that kind of commitment, but you can make a donation of a little bit of time or a little bit of money, please do that. wvcantwait.com is our website, wvcantwait.com/donate. Our film just came out. We don't have a lot of money to pump Facebook ads, so we're relying a lot on people sharing it organically. So you can go to our Facebook page, you can go to our website, you can go to our Twitter, wvcantwait, @wvcantwait, and find the video. And one of the best things you can do, especially if you're not based in West Virginia, is share the video with a personal note. Every time someone does that, that helps a whole new audience of people see the story of what's happening here and be reminded that they too. Yeah, those are some of the ways people can pitch in. And if none of those strike your interest, but you're still interested, even more reason to get in touch with me personally, and we'll find a role for you. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This has been great.
Absolutely. I'm so glad I did. Thank you, Mark, for putting that link in there again. Your website's in here a few times.
Thank you,
guys,
Mark.
Thank you so much for watching. As always, I love you. You're amazing. Monday, I have Jamarl Thomas from Progressive Soapbox. We've watched each other's shows forever, so we finally just said, fuck it, let's do one together. So that's Monday. And if Bernard ever freaking announces I'm going on the Humanist Report to represent Berner, so I'm extra excited for him to hurry that up. But anyway, oh, and Vermin Supreme is coming on. Do you know who that is?
No, I don't.
Vermin Supreme is badass. He's run for president every year for like 20 years, like each time for like 20 years. And he wears a boot on his head. And
I'm gonna have to check this out.
He promises free ponies for all, but not the condescending kind that Hillary said. Like, he really literally wants people to have real ponies. And he's all about...
It's a form of transportation.
Oh my God, that's so right. I would like to get horns for them just so they're a little more magical, but
nice.
I mean, he's just a beautiful soul, and he basically runs to basically show people, um, show candidates that they don't have to be like warmongers and stuff like that. Like he's a total hippie.
Okay.
So
Okay.
kind of
Check it out.
satirical, but he's awesome. So yeah, he'll be next week as well. But again, thank you guys so much for watching, and Stephen, continue getting better. Continue getting rest. And thank you so much for joining me. You are awesome. I wish you all the luck.
Yeah, bring me back on sometime. I'd love to. Thanks for all you're doing.
I absolutely will. 100%. Promise.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you guys so much.
Take care.
Have a good night.